Maybe you had a lot of fireworks in your neighborhood last night, like we did. They seemed like they were not going to end. But I'm sure that they brought things to be lively and celebratory. We also watched some of the fireworks on television. Maybe some of you did that as well. We focused in on some of the New York City things with the Statue of Liberty, with some of the angles and views of the skyline and of the fireworks around her and beyond her and in front of her. And I can almost hear her speaking whenever I see the Statue of Liberty, because of the words that we know from the pedestal or the base. And some of you remember some of these signs that we had in our sign borrowing station, our little library out there. This one says, "Keep doors open to huddled masses." And you might remember there from the echoes of the song just shared, and from the words of the poem in the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be breathed free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." Well, this poem, The New Colossus by Emma Lazarus, written in 1883, was created to raise funds for the construction of that pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. 1903, it was put, some of these words, on a bronze plaque and put in the inner wall under the pedestal so that people could read those words and meditate upon them, particularly the verse, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." Initially, Emma Lazarus did not want to write this poem or share it for this fundraising, but someone convinced her to do that, reminding her that her commitment to Jewish refugees to New York would become more depth of what was happening and unfolding, and would be more a part of people recognizing their welcome to the United States. Interestingly, she died in 1887, and it was a friend of hers who pushed to memorialize her and that poem inside the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty, because even though it was used for fundraising for the pedestal, it wasn't used at the dedication. It was kind of just set aside. But somehow it came back, and it is something that many of us think about regularly when we see the Statue of Liberty. And if you listen for echoes, if you listen for alignment, if you listen for things that seem to come together as you move in the world, as you look for connections, as you look for the Spirit weaving things together, you may have heard in our gospel lesson today that Michelle read the echoes of that sentiment when Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." And so we have our all back here. I'm not saying that we're a Christian nation. I'm not saying that there aren't aspects of Jesus' character, vision, or actions that I think America was founded on. Again, there are alignments for me and the Spirit bringing things together. I like to imagine this idea of coming when we're weary being a Christian thing and being an American thing. For me, it's hard to separate, because the things that I feel and see and know about America's ideals and aspirations are very close, overlapping, aligning with what I believe Jesus is telling us and telling communities to be about. So if we hear, "Give me your tired and your poor and your huddled masses," or we hear, "Come to me, all you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest," for me, those fit together. the idea of refuge and respite, of making sure that people know that they are not alone, of belonging to each other, of being committed to the common good, being committed when we see people that are in need, because none of us is self-sufficient. I'm not suggesting that they can't be separated, these ideas of America and Christianity, but for me, they overlap and they work well. And it's why I speak up and hold signs such as the one I just shared and the one over here on the chair, because I see my faith and I see where I live as aligning with aspirations and with ideals and with dreams. And so when I hear Jesus telling stories in the Gospel of Matthew about making sure that we serve people who are hungry and thirsty and strangers and naked and sick or alone, when I hear the Hebrew Bible stories about Leviticus telling us to welcome immigrants, to not cheat them, but to love them and treat them as family, to remember that we too were once immigrants, we too were slaves in Egypt, to remember that and to move forward being rooted and grounded in that part of our story. When I remember the prophet Isaiah, and we collect non-perishable food items and other gifts for Isaiah 58, when I remember the prophet saying, "Loose the bonds of injustice, undo the straps of the yoke, let the oppressed go free, share your bread with the hungry and bring the homeless poor into your house. When you see the naked, cover them. Do not hide yourself from your own kin. Offer your food to the hungry and satisfy the needs of the afflicted. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall rise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to live in." All of that, for me, aligns with our purpose in this place and in our faith. The aspiration and the striving is to be there to give people a place to rest and refresh, to give huddled masses and people who are carrying heavy burdens a place to put their burdens down and a place to be encouraged and a place not only to rest and refresh, but a place to belong so that they can go out again and so that maybe they, in turn, can relieve burdens from others and they can realize that we are all in it together. And as I think about this anniversary that we're celebrating this weekend, as I think about the overlaps between my faith and the country that I live in, as I think about where we have been, I recognize some tragic flaws. There were already people here when we came looking for respite, when we came looking to be removed from our weariness and our heavy burdens that were felt in other places. And then we made people come here. We dragged people. We kidnapped people to come to this place. And then we only gave agency and power to some of the people who were here with us. And so I recognize that while there's a great deal to celebrate, there's also a lot to grieve in our American story, in our Christian story. The ways that we tried to make people just like us, in the ways that we were committed to conformity and to ruling out any kind of difference, the ways that we captured people and tried to strip away their individuality, their uniqueness, so that they would be more like us, the way that we forced other people to do the work that we didn't want to do, that we couldn't do, the way that we mistreated people because of their gender or because of other biographical pieces of who they are, about inequalities, about separating people, about pushing people down, about not honoring and valuing them, about not giving them a seat at the table, about really not respecting the earth, the gifts that come, the way that God made us sovereign, the way that God gave us power to work with or work against the earth. So there's a lot to celebrate in our journeys as faithful people and in our journey as a particular nation, and there's a lot of work yet to do. And there are glimpses in our stories that overlap our faithfulness, our connectivity to one another, the ways that we seek to set each other free. Michelle read a passage from Romans, from the early church. It was kind of one of those passages that keeps looping back in on itself, and it kind of leaves us scratching our heads and wondering. It said, "I don't know what I'm doing because I don't do what I want to do. Instead, I do the thing that I hate. The desire to do good is inside of me, but I can't do it. I don't do the good that I want to do, but I do the evil that I don't want to do." Very convoluted, very confusing. What that reminds us is that there are always opportunities for us to do the right thing, and always opportunities for us to move in the direction that does not lead us to the common good, that leads us away from the aspirations and the hopes of God for the ways that we live individually and collectively and globally. It's like we have our foot on the gas and our foot on the brakes at the same time. We make mistakes. We move to celebrations. We find ourselves doing the right thing and then suddenly pushing against it and breaking down the celebrations and the advances, the movements, taking steps back, taking steps forward. We're invited to be more intentional about the ways that we live, not to make excuses, but to recognize that we can always do better. Indeed, to celebrate the ways that we have found success, but to remember that there's more that we can do. Not that any one of us needs to do all of it all the time. We can't quite be that focused. We can't quite be that strong. But we can be in partnership. And we can find times and places where we can rest, where we can grow, where we can reflect, where we step out so that others can step in, so that we can do this work. For we are inspired to be focused on these dreams and visions and aspirations. There's so much overlap in my mind of the Christian journey and of the early Americans and how we need to order ourselves and be available to each other, how we need to recognize when there are heavy burdens, how to recognize when people are exhausted, how to recognize when people are hungry and thirsty, how to recognize when people have been sidestepped, when they have been silenced, when they have been pushed or poked or prodded into places where they are powerless. Please pray with us. Holy One, we recognize on this weekend of the 250th anniversary of our nation and the Declaration of Independence that we are interdependent on you and on one another. For many of us, our Christian journey seems to align with the dream and the vision of this nation. And we have a lot to celebrate, and we have a lot to grieve. We have done things that have added to community, have built each other up, have honored and cherished others. And we have done and are continuing to do things that tear at the fabric of community, that turn away from the vision that you have given us, like we see when we look back at the early church, the way people shared their possessions, the way people recognized a deep, abiding belonging, the ways that people sat together and learned together, sang and prayed together. We recognize now, oh God, the diversity of opinion and experience, and at the same time, we know what we must be about, to help each other to thrive, to help each other to belong, to be one that recognize hunger and thirst, to see where people are alone or afraid, where people who are sick or in prison, We're people who have been forgotten or disempowered. And so, God, help us to find you, to find each other, to find the stranger, to be more and more willing to be focused and driven, and to know that none of us can do it alone, and that there are places where we can rest and refresh along the way. We recognize, oh God, that you equip us, that you give us insights and wisdom, and that we don't have to see it or believe it or live it the same way as the people around us, but you call us to respect, and you call us to belong, and you call us to be your people together. And so as we move to this communion table, we do so because we recognize our own hungers and thirsts. We recognize that none of us can do this alone, and that we need nurture, and we need places where we can come and refresh and strengthen ourselves and each other for this journey. And so be in this simple sacred meal and help us to feel it nurturing and guiding and gracing us for the work that we are about to do, for the ways that others will serve us, and for the ways that we are in it together. Amen.